So the opening lines of one of the chants in the Thai forest, the Theravadan funeral chants. The opening line is Anicca Vata Sankara. Anicca is impermanence, and Sankara in this context is all formed things, or it means all conditioned things or things that arise are impermanent. That's one of the main reflections repeated throughout the funeral chanting, and it's important for us to realise that of our own impermanence as a human entity, as a whole human being, but also we can reflect on it in subtle ways, like when we trim our nails and throw the clippings in the bin. We as soon as they are removed from us, we no longer view that as us, and then we can keep with those reflections. If I lost a finger or lost a toe, would I be less of a person? And in the literal sense, absolutely. If you've got one finger less, you're one finger less of a person. But that's irrelevant, really, when talking about the character of a person, or if people lose or have never had one of the senses. They may have been blind by birth or anything. So we can reflect on impermanence constantly of our bodies in day-to-day life, and we can view the sensations of the body as impermanent. And especially if we've had meditations that are quite challenging, where every cell in our body is in pain, and we're wanting to get off the chair or the cushion and stretch, but we sit through it, and suddenly there's this wash of relaxation, and this can feel quite pleasurable. All of a sudden there was this tension and pain, and then there's this feeling that washes over us like a cool water almost, and then that has gone, and we realised often, or if I knew it was going in a couple of minutes, I wouldn't have minded so much. And if we sit through these, we become less swayed by these impermanent sensations. We cling to them less. It's a tendency for humans to think that the way it is the way it will always be, even though the way it is might have only just happened. And we use the framework of the body to investigate this, and almost magically this practice of working within the framework of the body, we, without realising, our reactions to the world outside us becomes a lot more measured. Just as we don't become the sensations of the body, we don't become that pain, we're not consumed by that pain, we're observing it. Then in the outside world, we don't get consumed by the phenomenon around us. And it's especially now, we can see there's a lot to be worried about. But if I was given this talk 5 years ago, I would be saying, especially now, we are living in strange times and there's a lot to be worried about. Or we could have gone back to 2008, to the financial crisis, or or any of the floods that happened, the once-in-a-lifetime events, or the .com bubble, or that computer virus with the worrying about the clocks changing when the millennium, or 10 years, or the Twin Towers, or the Berlin Wall falling down, and we go back and then we realise that there's always something to worry about without looking too hard, and it's always inviting to say it's never been as bad, or it's never been as complex, or we're never going back. But we could have been born in any time and thought that. And it's not to say that everything is right with the world, but to just focus on the world and being consumed by the news or anything isn't productive. And it's when these current events consume us and our thinking and our being, it's not productive. We've all got I think a phrase that someone said, a cognitive bandwidth, and if we're consumed by so many external factors, it limits our capacity within ourselves to think, and not just for growth on a spiritual level, but also it limits our ability to think of others, or develop in any other way that we want. We're just consumed, and this being consumedness, the Pali word is bhava tanha, becoming, craving to become, is actually an almost a habit of addiction. It's almost like if we stopped caring about the news cycle, we wouldn't know who we are, or there's a fear of removing it, because there's a comfort in the familiarity of worry. But it can overwhelm us, and that feeling of overwhelm can manifest in all sorts of ways, and it's easy to blame external factors on overwhelm, but really we're looking at the blaming the straw that broke the camel's back, when really we're carrying a lot with us constantly, and looking at the one thing at the end that caused us to tip over the edge into panic or overwhelm or shutting down isn't productive. It's in the moment. There are things that we can do. We can focus on the breath and calm our breathing down and focus on what we need to do in that moment. But when we do that, we realise there's only one or two things that we need to do, and those one or two things are possible. But with this sense of overwhelm, we weren't overwhelmed by those one or two actions. We were overwhelmed because we were carrying so many other things at the same time. And that's what overwhelm is. It's overloading ourselves subconsciously. So when events do happen, we haven't got that cognitive bandwidth to absorb, and we've all got different capacities for absorbing things. And it's not to say that people don't suffer from events that are overwhelming, but if we find that we're regularly getting overwhelmed by small things rather than life-changing events, we can look within ourselves and say, what else were we carrying around before we were overwhelmed? Were we carrying around worry or doubt or negative self-view, or a feeling to achieve, or a feeling to be a perfect person, or a negative view of us feeling that we were never going to achieve anything, or there could be any sort of baggage that we're carrying and that's all what in a Buddhist sense would be called ignorance. Like we're ignoring these parts of us. We're ignoring this baggage, and they're unproductive. But they're these habitual bags that we carry. That on one hand we're not aware, but on another hand they're affecting our daily lives. Not only in and of themselves, but it decreases our cognitive bandwidth for dealing with other things. And in the moment it is difficult, and yes, you can go back to the breath, but that's more like an antihistamine. It's dealing with an allergic reaction, but what we can do is, after that period of overwhelm, reflect and see what is it about ourselves that we're carrying, what is the excess baggage, and we can then make steps when we're quiet to decompress. And that decompression may be sitting quietly with a cup of tea and a cake, or a biscuit, or stroking the dog, and thoughts can arise, and we can let them go, and we can work on a deeper level on other forms of baggage, childhood bags that we've picked up, the parents not being perfect bag, and we can let go of them on slightly longer periods of reflection. But it's that willingness to accept responsibility for our own emotions, realizing that we're overwhelmed because we've let ourselves get to that state, and then taking our own steps to remedy it. And it's not to excuse the bad events that may tipped us over, but blaming the world for our mental state isn't going to improve our mental state. And there's a difference between something being our fault and our responsibility. And it's not our fault that some certain things may happen, but we are responsible for our own emotions and on our own mental well-being, and putting that on external factors, or putting that on other people to fix, or other people to change. If this person I live with was only cleaner or tidier or quieter or clearer, and we're then blaming the other person for how we feel, and it's not productive wanting other people to change. And yes, there's unacceptable behaviour, and I'm not saying that we should accept the unacceptable, but we're looking at what we can do for our own mental health, for our own happiness, and taking responsibility for our own happiness, because it's in our own selfish interest to be happy, and there are things that we can do, but the first step is to take ownership of our emotions, and over time things change very slowly. I think people overestimate the value of one meditation session. They think that things will happen if we sit down for half an hour or an hour, but people really underestimate what would happen if we sit for that half an hour or however long it may be, once, 2, 3 times a week. And after a few months, if we meditate 3 or so, 4 times a week for 20 minutes, half an hour, phenomenal things would happen with that consistency. With one session won't do much, but put them together, and I think people underestimate the value of quiet and time and reflection, even without it being on a formal meditation, on a chair in a meditation group, or on a cushion on a zafu, but just sitting quietly on a sofa without any music or the TV on, and can really lead to massive benefits over what's relatively a short space of time of only a few months. Hopefully some of the things I've said are of benefit to people. I think that's all I can really say on the subject today. Namodana, thank you for coming.